The wrench slipped from my hands and clattered against the concrete floor of my garage. Outside, I could hear Selah's laughter, too bright, too flirtatious for a Tuesday evening conversation with our neighbor. Nothing says, "I love you," like asking your husband to fix your sister's car while you spend the evening networking with your colleagues. My name is Dean Calix, and I'm an industrial engineer at the paper mill that keeps half of Edgewater employed. This town used to be something, back when the lake was cleaner and the factories were busier. Now it's all peeling paint, chain restaurants, and neighbors who know everyone's business before you do. I wiped my hands on an old rag and walked to the garage window. Selah stood by the mailbox, her attorney blazer perfectly pressed despite the humidity. She was talking to Cole Traeger, her colleague from the law firm. His BMW sat in our driveway like it belonged there. "Dean's so handy," I heard her say, her voice carrying that particular tone she used when she wanted to sound impressive. "He can fix anything." Cole laughed, stepping closer to her. Lucky guy, having such a beautiful wife who appreciates his talents. I felt something twist in my chest. Not jealousy exactly, but recognition. I'd been married to Selah for 8 years. I knew when she was performing. My phone buzzed. A text from Raina, Selah's younger sister. "Oops, meant to send this to Mom," followed by a photo that made my stomach drop. The image showed Selah at the Lakeside Inn, sitting in a booth with Cole. Her hand rested on his arm, her head tilted toward him in that intimate way she used to look at me. The timestamp showed last Friday, the night she'd told me she was working late on a case. I stared at the photo, then at my wife outside, still chatting with Cole like they were casual acquaintances. The wrench felt heavy in my hand. "Dean," Selah's voice called from outside, "could you grab us some drinks?" I pocketed my phone and walked outside, forcing a smile. "Sure thing. Cole, staying for dinner?" He had the decency to look uncomfortable. "Actually, I should get going. Just wanted to discuss the Morrison case with Selah." "At 9 p.m.? I kept my voice light, curious rather than accusatory. Selah's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "We're on deadline. You know how it is." I nodded, still smiling. "I do indeed. Drive safe, Cole." After he left, Selah followed me inside. "You seemed tense out there." "Just tired. Long day at the mill." I opened the refrigerator, my back to her. "How was your evening meeting?" "Fine. Productive." She paused. "I might have to work late again tomorrow." I turned around, studying her face. Selah was beautiful, sharp features, intelligent eyes, the kind of woman who commanded attention in a courtroom. Right now, those eyes held something I'd never seen before: calculation. "Of course," I said. "Whatever you need to do." That night, I lay awake listening to her breathe beside me. She'd fallen asleep quickly, like someone with a clear conscience. I stared at the ceiling, thinking about the photo, about Cole's hand on her shoulder, about the way she'd lied so smoothly. By morning, I'd made a decision. If Selah wanted to play games, I'd learn the rules. The next day, I started paying attention. Really paying attention. I noticed how she checked her phone constantly, how she'd step outside to take certain calls, how she'd started wearing perfume to work. Perfume she never wore for me anymore. I also noticed other things, like how Maren, Selah's older sister, had been coming around more often, how she'd find excuses to touch my arm when we talked, how she'd compliment my work around the house in ways that felt loaded with meaning. "Selah doesn't know how good she has it," Maren had said the previous weekend, helping me move furniture. "Some women would appreciate a man who actually fixes things instead of just talking about it." At the time, I'd brushed it off. Now I wondered if there was more to it. I started keeping a journal. Nothing dramatic, just observations, times, dates, conversations. The kind of documentation my engineering background had trained me to maintain. If this was going to get messy, I wanted evidence. Thursday evening, I followed Cole's BMW to the Sunset Motel on Route 9, the kind of place that rented rooms by the hour and didn't ask questions. I parked across the street and waited. 20 minutes later, Selah's Honda pulled up. I sat there for an hour, watching the light in room 12, feeling something cold settle in my chest. When I finally drove home, I had a plan forming. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Friday morning, I called in sick to work and drove to Brady's gym. Brady Flynn owned the place, a former boxer who'd become my friend over the past year. He was the kind of guy who understood that sometimes life required unconventional solutions. "You look like someone stepped on your grave," Brady said, watching me hit the heavy bag with more force than usual. I told him everything. Brady listened without judgment, occasionally nodding. "So what are you thinking?" he asked when I finished. "I'm thinking my wife believes I'm too nice to fight back." Brady grinned. "And she's wrong?" "Very wrong." That afternoon, I visited Cole's BMW in the law firm parking lot. Nothing too obvious. Just a small puncture in 2 tires and a bottle of fish oil poured into the air conditioning intake. I left a note under his windshield. "Remember who you're screwing over." The call came 3 hours later. "Dean, what the hell is wrong with you?" Selah's voice was sharp with anger. "I'm sorry?" "Don't play innocent. Mrs. Henderson saw you in the law firm parking lot this afternoon. She took a picture. Mrs. Henderson lived 2 streets over and had apparently made surveillance her retirement hobby. I'd underestimated the Edgewater gossip network." "I was returning your sunglasses," I said calmly. "You left them in my truck." "By vandalizing Cole's car? That's a serious accusation. Do you have proof?" The silence stretched between us. Finally, she said, "We need to talk when I get home." Looking forward to it. But when she arrived, she wasn't alone. Maren was with her, and both women looked ready for battle. "Dean, sit down," Selah said, like she was addressing a client. "I'm comfortable standing." Maren crossed her arms. "Selah told me what happened today. This isn't like you." I looked between them, my wife and her sister, both beautiful, both convinced they had me figured out. What exactly isn't like me? The jealousy, the paranoia. Selah's voice had that patient tone she used with difficult witnesses. "Cole is a colleague, nothing more." I pulled out my phone and showed them Raina's photo. "Funny, this looks like more." Selah's face went pale, but she recovered quickly. "That's taken out of context. We were discussing a case. At the Lakeside Inn, on a Friday night. Very professional." Maren stepped forward. "Even if it was what you think, destroying property isn't the answer." "You're right," I said. "It's not the answer, it's just the beginning." Selah's eyes narrowed. "What's that supposed to mean?" I smiled, the same smile I'd given Cole the night before. "It means I'm done being the nice guy who fixes cars and doesn't ask questions. You want to play games? Let's play." The room went quiet. Outside, I could hear kids playing in the street, the normal sounds of suburban life continuing while mine fell apart. "Dean," Maren said softly, "you're scaring us." "Good," I replied. "Maybe now we're even." The next morning, I woke up alone. Selah had spent the night at her parents' house, claiming she needed space to think. What she really needed was time to strategize. I knew this because Raina called me at 7 a.m., guilt heavy in her voice. "Dean, I'm sorry about the photo. I really did mean to send it to Mom, but..." She paused. "Selah's asking me to say you've been acting strange lately. Aggressive." "Have I been?" "No, but she's scared. She thinks you might hurt her." I sat up in bed, suddenly wide awake. "Raina, listen to me very carefully. Have I ever, in 8 years of marriage, raised a hand to your sister? No, never. But have I ever threatened her? Yelled at her? Made her afraid to come home? No, but Dean, you have to understand. What I understand is that your sister is building a narrative. The question is whether you're going to help her. Silence. Then, quietly, she froze the joint accounts this morning. My coffee mug stopped halfway to my lips. She what? Filed some kind of emergency request with the court. Says she's afraid you'll drain their savings or something. I set down the mug and walked to my computer. Sure enough, our checking account showed a hold. Our savings account, too. Selah had left me with exactly enough cash to buy groceries for a week. There's more, Raina continued. She's telling people at the firm that you've been following her, that you damaged Cole's car in a jealous rage. And what are people saying? That they're not surprised, that quiet guys like you are always the ones who snap. I closed my eyes, feeling the trap closing around me. Selah was good, better than I'd given her credit for. She'd turned my one moment of retaliation into evidence of instability, my justified anger into proof of her victimhood. Raina, I need you to do something for me. I don't know if I should. I need you to keep your eyes and ears open. Your sister is not the victim here, and I think you know that. A long pause. She's been different lately. More secretive, and the things she says about you when you're not around. What things? That you're boring, that you never understood her ambitions, that she married too young and settled for too little. Raina's voice got smaller. It hurt to hear. I bet it did. But Raina, the truth is going to come out eventually. When it does, you'll want to be on the right side of it. After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen, looking around at the life Selah and I had built together. The house we'd bought with my steady paycheck and her law school loans, the furniture we'd picked out together, the photos on the walls documenting 8 years of what I'd thought was happiness. Now it felt like evidence of my own stupidity. My phone rang. Brady. Heard through the grapevine that your wife's painting you as the villain, he said without preamble. News travels fast in Edgewater. Faster when the story involves lawyers and adultery. You need help? I thought about it. What kind of help? The kind that doesn't leave fingerprints. An hour later, I was at Brady's gym, not to work out, but to plan. Brady had connections throughout the town. People who owed him favors, people who knew things, people who understood that sometimes the system needed a push in the right direction. First thing, Brady said, you need to document everything. Every lie she tells, every move she makes. Build your own case. Already started. Good. Second, you need allies. People who know the real you, who can vouch for your character when she tries to destroy it. Working on that too. Brady grinned. And third? Third, you need to stop playing defense and start playing offense. That afternoon, I opened new bank accounts at a different institution. I quietly moved the tools and equipment from my home workshop to a storage unit. I made copies of important documents and stored them at Brady's gym. If Selah wanted to play financial warfare, I'd be ready. But I also started gathering ammunition. I drove to the Sunset Motel and had a conversation with the desk clerk, a guy named Tommy who'd gone to high school with Brady. For $50, Tommy was happy to share that room. 12 had been rented twice a week for the past month, always by the same blonde woman who paid cash and never stayed more than 2 hours. I visited the Lakeside Inn and learned that Selah and Cole had been regular customers for 6 weeks, always ordering expensive wine and staying late into the evening. I even stopped by Cole's apartment complex and had a chat with his neighbor, an elderly woman who enjoyed watching the comings and goings in the parking lot. She was delighted to tell me about the attractive brunette who'd been visiting Cole regularly, usually arriving around 10 p.m. and leaving before dawn. By the time Selah came home that evening, I had enough evidence to bury her affair in any court in the state. She walked in like she owned the place, which I suppose she thought she did. We need to establish some ground rules, she announced. Do we? I've spoken to a counselor. She says we need clear boundaries while we work through this crisis. What crisis is that? Selah's jaw tightened. Your jealousy, your anger issues, your inability to trust me. I laughed, actually laughed, and watched her face flush with anger. Something funny? Just admiring the performance. You've really committed to this victim role, haven't you? I'm not performing anything. I'm trying to save our marriage. By emptying our bank accounts and spreading lies about me around town. By protecting myself from a husband who's become unpredictable and potentially dangerous. We stared at each other across the living room. 8 years of marriage, and I was finally seeing my wife clearly. You know what's funny? I said. I actually believed you loved me. Something flickered in her eyes. Guilt, maybe, or regret. But it passed quickly. I do love you. That's why I'm trying to help you get through this. Through what, exactly? Your breakdown. Your paranoid delusions about me and Cole. I pulled out my phone and showed her a photo I'd taken that afternoon. Her Honda in the Sunset Motel parking lot, timestamp clearly visible. Funny thing about delusions, I said. Sometimes they turn out to be true. Selah's face went white, then red. You followed me? I documented your lies. That's stalking. That's illegal. So is adultery in this state. So is filing false financial protection orders. She stepped back, and for the first time since this whole thing started, I saw fear in her eyes. Real fear. Dean, you're scaring me. I'm just getting started. The front door opened, and Marin walked in without knocking, something that had always annoyed me, but that Selah had always defended as family closeness. Is everything okay? Marin asked, looking between us. I could hear voices from the driveway. Your sister was just explaining how she's trying to save our marriage by lying to lawyers and freezing our assets. Marin's eyes went to Selah, then back to me. Maybe I should go. No, Selah said quickly. Stay. I might need a witness. A witness to what? To whatever Dean's planning to do next. I looked at both women, my wife and her sister, both beautiful, both convinced they understood the situation. You want to know what I'm planning? I asked. They nodded. I'm planning to show this whole town exactly who Selah Calix really is, starting tomorrow. The Edgewater Elementary School Fall Festival was the kind of event that brought out everyone in town. Parents, grandparents, local business owners, and half the gossips in 3 counties all gathered to watch kids perform in the talent show and bid on silent auction items. It was also the perfect venue for what I had planned. I'd volunteered to help with the sound system, a skill I'd picked up during my engineering training. Nobody questioned why Dean Calix wanted to spend his Saturday afternoon untangling microphone cables and adjusting speaker levels. I was just the reliable guy who showed up when work needed doing. Selah arrived with Marin and Raina, all 3 women dressed like they were attending a country club luncheon instead of an elementary school fundraiser. She'd been staying at her parents' house for 3 days, coming home only to collect clothes and maintain the pretense that we were working through our issues. The whole town was watching us, waiting to see how the drama would unfold. In Edgewater, a lawyer's marriage falling apart was better entertainment than cable television. Dean, Principal Martinez waved me over to the main stage. The microphone's acting up again. Can you take a look? I spent 20 minutes fixing a connection that didn't need fixing, all while watching Selah work the crowd. She had a gift for making people feel important, for making them want to confide in her. Right now, she was using that gift to build sympathy for herself. I watched her talking to Mrs. Patterson from the hardware store, touching her arm sympathetically while explaining how difficult things had been at home. I saw her embrace Carol Jenkins, the bank president's wife, while whispering something that made Carol's eyes widen with concern. She was good, but I was better prepared. Testing, testing, I said into the microphone, my voice carrying across the festival grounds. Ladies and gentlemen, If I could have your attention for just a moment. The crowd turned toward the stage. Selah looked up from her conversation, her face suddenly alert. I know we're all here to support our kids and our school, I continued, but I wanted to take a minute to talk about something that's been weighing on my heart lately. Principal Martinez looked confused but didn't interrupt. The crowd was listening, curious about what Dean Calix, quiet, reliable Dean, had to say. You see, I've learned some things recently about trust, about honesty, about the importance of really knowing the people we love. I found Selah in the crowd. She was staring at me with growing horror. And I think it's important to share those lessons with all of you. Dean, Selah called out, her voice carrying across the suddenly quiet festival grounds. This isn't the time or place. Actually, I think it's exactly the right time and place. After all, this is our community. These are the people who've watched us build our life together, who've supported us through good times and bad. They deserve to know the truth. I pulled out my phone and connected it to the sound system, a feature I'd spent the morning setting up. The truth about what? Someone called from the crowd. The truth about adultery, I said simply. About lies. About what happens when someone you trust decides to rewrite history to make themselves the victim. The festival grounds had gone completely silent. Even the kids had stopped running around, sensing the tension in the adult conversation. For the past 6 weeks, I continued, my wife has been conducting an affair with her colleague, Cole Traeger. She's been meeting him at the Sunset Motel twice a week and at the Lakeside Inn for romantic dinners that she claimed were work meetings. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd. Selah was pushing through the people, trying to reach the stage, but the crowd was too thick and too interested in what was happening. When I discovered this affair, I said, I made the mistake of confronting it directly. I damaged Cole's car, an action I regret, not because it was wrong, but because it gave my wife ammunition to paint me as unstable and dangerous. Dean, stop this right now! Selah had reached the front of the stage, her face flushed with anger and embarrassment. She froze our joint accounts, I continued, ignoring her. Filed false reports claiming I was a threat to her safety, spread rumors around town that I was having some kind of breakdown. I touched my phone screen, and the first photo appeared on the large screen behind me. Selah and Cole at the Lakeside Inn, her hand on his arm, both of them laughing intimately. The crowd's murmur grew louder. But here's what she didn't know, I said. I documented everything. More photos appeared. Selah's Honda at the Sunset Motel, Cole's BMW in the same parking lot, timestamps showing they'd arrived within minutes of each other. Dean, please. Selah's voice had gone from angry to pleading. You're humiliating both of us. No, I said, looking down at her. You humiliated both of us. I'm just making sure everyone knows who's really responsible. The final image was a screenshot of text messages, ones that Raina had forwarded to me that morning, messages between Selah and Cole discussing their stupid husband and boring wife problems. The festival grounds erupted in shocked conversations. I could see phones coming out, people taking pictures and videos. By tomorrow, this would be all over social media. I unplugged my phone and stepped away from the microphone. That's all I wanted to say, I announced. Enjoy the rest of the festival. I walked off the stage and through the crowd, people stepping aside to let me pass. Some looked shocked, others sympathetic. A few seemed almost admiring. I'd just done something that half the married people in Edgewater had probably fantasized about. Publicly called out a cheating spouse with receipts to back it up. Behind me, I could hear Selah trying to do damage control, her lawyer voice explaining that the photos were taken out of context, that I was having a mental health crisis, that none of this was what it appeared to be. But it was too late. The truth was out, and in a town like Edgewater, truth had a way of spreading faster than gossip. I was almost to my truck when Marin caught up with me. Dean, wait! I turned around. Selah's older sister looked shaken, her perfect makeup smudged from tears. "Is it true?" she asked. "All of it?" "Every word." She closed her eyes. "I knew something was wrong. The way she'd been talking about you, the excuses she'd been making. But I hoped. You hoped I was the problem? I hoped it was fixable." She opened her eyes, and I saw something new in them. Respect, maybe, or recognition. "What you just did took courage. It took desperation." "No," she said firmly. "It took strength. Selah's been controlling the narrative for weeks, making you look like the villain. Someone needed to tell the truth." I studied her face. "And what do you think happens now?" "Now?" Marin glanced back toward the festival, where Selah was still trying to explain herself to a crowd that was no longer listening. "Now she faces the consequences of her choices." "And you?" "Me?" Marin stepped closer, her voice dropping to almost a whisper. "I think I've been on the wrong side of this family drama." She reached out and touched my arm, the same gesture I'd seen her make dozens of times before, but this time it felt different. Less like casual flirtation and more like an alliance being formed. "Dean," she said, "there are things you don't know yet. About Selah, about why she really started this affair. If you want the whole truth, meet me tomorrow night. Brady's place, 8 o'clock. Before I could respond, she was walking back toward the festival, leaving me standing by my truck with more questions than answers. I drove home through the quiet streets of Edgewater, knowing that by tomorrow morning, everyone in town would know exactly what kind of man Dean Calix really was. And for the first time in months, I was okay with that. Brady's gym after hours felt like a confessional, dim lighting, heavy shadows, and the kind of privacy that encouraged honest conversation. I arrived at 8 o'clock sharp to find Marin already there, sitting on a weight bench with 2 cups of coffee and an expression I couldn't read. "You came," she said. "You said there were things I needed to know." She handed me a coffee and gestured for me to sit across from her. "There are. But first I need to know something. Yesterday, at the festival, was that just about revenge, or do you actually want to save your marriage?" I thought about it. A week ago, I would have said I wanted to save it. Now, I just want the truth. Good. Because what I'm about to tell you is going to make saving it impossible. Marin pulled out her phone and scrolled through her messages. "Selah's been planning this for months, Dean. The affair, the financial manipulation, all of it. She's been building a case to divorce you and take everything. I figured that much out. But you didn't figure out why." She turned her phone toward me, showing a text conversation between her and Selah from 3 months ago. "Read this." The messages made my stomach turn. Selah complaining about being stuck with me, about how my limited ambitions were holding her back, about how she deserved better than a small-town life with a small-town man. But the worst part was Selah's plan, laid out in casual detail. Seduce Cole to establish grounds for divorce, manipulate me into looking unstable to gain advantage in court, take the house and half my retirement savings to start fresh in the city. "She's been using all of us," Marin continued, "me, Raina, even her parents, telling each of us different versions of the story, making us think you were the problem." I set down the coffee, my hands shaking slightly. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because I'm tired of being her accomplice." Marin's voice was bitter. "And because someone needs to stop her before she destroys more lives." "More lives?" "Cole's not her first affair, Dean. There was someone at her old firm, and before that, a professor in law school. Selah has a pattern. She finds men who can advance her career, uses them until she gets what she needs, then discards them when they're no longer useful. The pieces were falling into place, painting a picture of my wife that I'd been too blind or too trusting to see. "The thing is," Marin continued, "I don't think she expected you to fight back. She thought you'd just take it, maybe drink yourself into depression while she played the long-suffering wife dealing with an unstable husband. Instead, I embarrassed her in front of the whole town. You exposed her. There's a difference. Marin leaned forward. But Dean, what you did yesterday was just the opening move. She's not going to give up. She's going to come at you harder now, more desperately. As if summoned by our conversation, my phone rang. Selah. I looked at Marin, who nodded encouragingly, then answered. We need to talk, Selah said without preamble. Her voice was cold, controlled, her courtroom voice. I'm listening. Not over the phone. Meet me at the house in an hour. I don't think that's a good idea. It wasn't a request, Dean. Be there, or my next call is to the police about harassment and stalking. The line went quiet. I looked at Marin, who had heard every word. She's bluffing, Marin said. After yesterday, no one's going to believe her victim act. Maybe, or maybe she's desperate enough to try anything. Marin stood up, pacing to the window that overlooked the empty parking lot. Dean, I want to help you. Not just with advice, I mean really help. But I need to know you're serious about this. Serious about what? She turned back to me, and in the dim light of the gym, I saw something fierce in her expression. About making her pay for what she's done. To you, to me, to everyone she's manipulated. What exactly are you suggesting? I'm suggesting we give Selah exactly what she's been asking for, a real fight. But this time, she won't control the narrative. I studied Marin's face, looking for signs of deception or hidden agenda. All I saw was anger and determination. What did you have in mind? She smiled, and for the first time since this whole thing started, I felt like I might have an actual ally. Meet her at the house like she wants, Marin said, but you won't be going alone, and you won't be going unprepared. An hour later, I pulled into my driveway to find Selah's Honda already there, along with Cole's BMW. Apparently, she'd decided to bring backup to our talk. I sat in my truck for a moment, checking the small recording device Brady had given me. Legal in our state as long as one party consented, and I definitely consented to protecting myself from whatever Selah had planned. The house felt different when I walked in, colder, more hostile. Selah sat in the living room chair she'd claimed as her own years ago, while Cole stood behind her like a bodyguard. Both of them looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. Thank you for coming, Selah said, her tone suggesting this was a business meeting rather than a conversation between husband and wife. Wouldn't miss it. Cole, nice to see you again. How's the car? Cole's jaw tightened, but he didn't respond. We're here to discuss terms, Selah continued. Terms for what? For ending this marriage with some dignity intact, for both of us. I sat down on the couch, making myself comfortable. I'm listening. You'll agree to an uncontested divorce. I'll keep the house, you'll keep your retirement accounts, and we'll split everything else down the middle. That's generous of you. In exchange, you'll stop the public harassment. No more social media posts, no more confrontations at community events, no more stalking me or Cole. Stalking is a strong word. So is adultery, Cole interjected, speaking for the first time. I looked at him with genuine curiosity. Are you planning to marry her, Cole? Or are you just the latest in a series of career advancement opportunities? His face flushed red. You don't know what you're talking about. I know she's done this before. I know you're not special. And I know that as soon as she's squeezed everything useful out of you, you'll be yesterday's news. That's enough, Selah snapped. Cole is here because I asked him to be. Because I don't feel safe alone with you anymore. Since when? Since you started acting like a stranger. Since you started following me and taking pictures and making threats. I pulled out my phone and showed them the recording app. Speaking of documentation, I hope you don't mind if I record this conversation. For my own protection, you understand. Selah's eyes narrowed. Turn that off. I don't think so. See, I've learned that when dealing with people who lie as easily as breathing, it's important to have evidence. Cole stepped forward. She said, "Turn it off." I stood up, and suddenly the dynamic in the room shifted. Cole was taller than me, but I was broader, stronger from years of physical work and recent months at Brady's gym. More importantly, I was angry in a way that Cole, privileged, soft, used to getting his way through words rather than actions, wasn't prepared for. "She said a lot of things," I replied calmly. "Most of them lies. So forgive me if I don't feel compelled to follow her instructions." "Dean," Selah's voice had a warning edge, "you're proving my point about your instability." "Am I? Or am I just refusing to be manipulated anymore?" The front door opened and Raina walked in, followed by Marin. Both women looked around the room, taking in the tension. "Sorry we're late," Marin said cheerfully. "Traffic was terrible." Selah stared at her sister in shock. "What are you doing here?" "Supporting Dean," Marin replied simply. "Someone should." "And I brought these," Raina added, holding up a folder thick with papers. "All those screenshots you wanted, Dean. Text messages, hotel receipts, credit card statements, everything." I watched Selah's face cycle through confusion, anger, and finally understanding as she realized that her own sisters had turned against her. "You've been planning this," she said quietly. "Just like you planned to destroy my marriage and steal my assets," I replied. "The difference is, my plan is based on truth." Cole looked between the sisters, clearly realizing he'd walked into something much more complicated than a simple divorce negotiation. "Maybe I should go," he said. "Maybe you should," I agreed. "This is about to become a family matter." But instead of leaving, Cole moved protectively closer to Selah, and I realized he was more invested in this situation than I'd thought. "Actually," I said, "stay. There are some things you should hear about the woman you're planning a future with." The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. Selah sat rigid in her chair, Cole hovering behind her like an uncertain guardian, while Marin and Raina flanked me with their folder of evidence. "Before we go any further," I said, "I think everyone should understand exactly what we're dealing with here." I nodded to Raina, who opened the folder and began spreading documents across the coffee table, like a lawyer presenting a case. "Bank statements showing cash withdrawals that coincide with hotel visits," she announced. "Credit card receipts from restaurants where Selah claimed to be working late. Text messages discussing how to manipulate Dean into looking unstable. And this," Marin added, pulling out a printed email, "is correspondence between Selah and a private investigator, discussing how to document Dean's erratic behavior for divorce proceedings." I watched the color drain from Cole's face as he realized the scope of Selah's deception. "You hired a private investigator?" he asked her. "It's standard procedure in contested divorces," Selah replied, but her voice lacked its usual conviction. "Contested?" I laughed. "You mean the divorce you were planning before you even started the affair?" Cole stepped back from Selah's chair, his expression shifting from protective to confused. "What is he talking about?" Marin handed him a printed text message. "Read it." I watched Cole's face as he absorbed Selah's words from 2 months ago. "Cole is perfect for this, attractive enough to make Dean jealous, ambitious enough to play along, and naive enough to think he's special. Once the divorce is final, I'll move to the city and start fresh." "You wrote this?" Cole's voice was barely above a whisper. Selah's composure finally cracked. "It's not what it looks like. I was angry, frustrated. I didn't mean—" "You didn't mean to get caught," I interrupted. "There's a difference." Cole was staring at the text message like it was written in a foreign language. "You used me." "No, You manipulated me into an affair so you could divorce your husband and take his money." "Cole, please, let me explain." But Cole was already moving toward the door, his face flushed with humiliation and anger. "I can't believe I risked my career, my reputation for this." "Cole, wait!" The door slammed behind him, leaving Selah alone to face the three of us. "Congratulations," I said. "You just lost your accomplice." Selah stood up, her lawyer mask sliding back into place. This doesn't change anything. I still have grounds for divorce based on your behavior. What behavior is that? Harassment, stalking, the public humiliation at the school festival. You mean the public revelation of your adultery? I mean the vindictive destruction of my reputation and career. Marin laughed, a sound with no humor in it. Your reputation? Selah, you've been lying to everyone for months. You manipulated your own family, betrayed your husband, and used a colleague to advance your personal agenda. What reputation do you think you're protecting? I'm protecting my future, my career, my right to be happy. At everyone else's expense, Raina added quietly. Do you even hear yourself? Selah looked around the room at the three of us, her husband and her two sisters, all united against her, and something desperate flickered in her eyes. You don't understand, she said. None of you understand what it's like to have ambitions beyond this town, beyond this life. I was suffocating here. So you decided to burn everything down instead of just leaving honestly? I decided to secure my future, to take what I deserved after 8 years of supporting this family. Supporting? I stood up, my anger finally breaking free. I worked 60-hour weeks while you went to law school. I took out loans to pay your tuition. I supported your career even when it meant sacrificing my own opportunities. What exactly did you sacrifice for me? My youth, my potential, my chance at real success. The words hung in the air like a slap. After 8 years of marriage, my wife had just admitted that she considered our entire relationship a mistake, a limitation on her potential rather than a partnership. Well, I said quietly, at least we finally have the truth. Selah seemed to realize she'd gone too far. Dean, I didn't mean it like that. Yes, you did. And you know what? I'm grateful you finally said it out loud. I walked to the window, looking out at the street where we'd lived together, where we'd planned to build a life. Now it just looked like a place I used to know. Here's what's going to happen, I said, turning back to face her. You're going to pack your things and move out tonight. You can stay with your parents or find your own place. I don't care which. This is my house too. This is the house I've been paying the mortgage on while you spent our savings on hotel rooms and romantic dinners with Cole. You can't just kick me out. Actually, I can. See, while you were busy planning my destruction, I was consulting with a lawyer of my own. A good one, who specializes in cases involving adultery and financial fraud. Selah's face went pale. Financial fraud? Using joint credit cards to fund an extramarital affair. Freezing accounts to prevent your spouse from accessing marital assets. Filing false protection orders. It's amazing how many laws you can break when you're not paying attention. I pulled out a document and handed it to her. Temporary restraining order. You have 2 hours to collect your personal belongings, and then you're not allowed back on this property without a court order. Selah stared at the paper, her hands shaking. You planned this. I learned from the best. She looked around the room one more time, at her sisters who had turned against her, at the husband she'd underestimated, at the life she'd destroyed in pursuit of something better. This isn't over, she said. Yes, it is, Marin replied. It's been over for months. We're just finally admitting it. After Selah left, escorted by Raina to make sure she only took what belonged to her, I sat in my living room with Marin, surrounded by the evidence of my wife's betrayal. How do you feel? Marin asked. I thought about it. Empty, relieved, angry, grateful. Grateful? That I found out who she really was before I wasted any more years on her. Marin moved closer on the couch, her hand finding mine. And now? Now I figure out who I am without her. She squeezed my hand. You're stronger than she ever gave you credit for. We'll see. Outside, the sun was setting over Edgewater, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. It looked like the end of something, but also like the beginning of something else. For the first time in months, I was looking forward to finding out what that something might be. The next morning brought news that spread through Edgewater faster than wildfire. Cole Traeger had resigned from his position at the law firm and left town overnight, citing personal reasons and ethical concerns about his recent conduct. Selah, meanwhile, had been placed on administrative leave pending an investigation into her use of firm resources for personal matters. Apparently, some of those romantic dinners with Cole had been charged to the company credit card as client development. I learned all this from Brady, who'd heard it from his cousin who worked at the law firm's reception desk. "Sounds like your wife's house of cards is collapsing," he said as we worked out together. "Ex-wife, hopefully. Any regrets?" I thought about it as I lifted weights, considering the question seriously. Did I regret exposing Selah's affair? Did I regret fighting back instead of just accepting her betrayal quietly? "No," I said finally. "The only thing I regret is not seeing who she really was sooner." "And Maren?" I set down the weights and looked at him. "What about Maren? Come on, Dean. I've got eyes. She's been looking at you like you're the answer to her prayers. She's been supportive during a difficult time. She's been interested in you since before this whole thing started, and you know it." I did know it. The question was what I planned to do about it. "One disaster at a time," I said. But as I drove home through the familiar streets of Edgewater, I found myself thinking about Maren's smile, about the way she'd stood by me when her own sister had turned into an enemy, about the possibility that maybe, just maybe, something good could come out of this wreckage. The house felt different when I walked in, cleaner somehow, lighter, like a weight I hadn't realized I was carrying had finally been lifted. I made dinner for one, opened a beer, and sat on my back porch watching the sun set over the lake. Tomorrow, I'd start the divorce proceedings. Tomorrow, I'd begin rebuilding my life. But tonight, for the first time in months, I was content to just sit quietly and enjoy the peace. My phone buzzed with a text message from Maren. "Thank you for showing me what real strength looks like." I smiled and typed back, "Thank you for reminding me I wasn't alone." "Dinner tomorrow?" she replied. I looked out at the lake, at the town I'd called home for 8 years, at the life I was finally free to live on my own terms. "I'd like that," I typed back. And for the first time since this whole nightmare began, I meant it completely.